G'day guys, Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor here for another expert masterclass. I'm here with Danny Chiha from Kelly+Partners Northern Beaches. Danny is by far the best accountant and tax advisor that I've ever met. He's all around good bloke. He's handsome as well. But Danny's donated some of his time. I know it's just chaos at the moment for him with all this stuff that's going on with this coronavirus situation. So Danny, I appreciate you giving us some time today, mate.
No worries, mate. Thank you.
So give us in a nutshell, who are you? What do you do?
So Danny Chiha, Kelly+Partners, as you said, we're an accounting firm on the Northern Beaches. We're part of a bigger group that's all around, mostly Sydney, also in Melbourne. But we essentially help small businesses. We spend our day and night dealing with small business, understanding small business. So we're essentially the person that they go to, similar to yourself, Jackson, we're the person they go to when they have questions or need help, and we just help them navigate through that. Obviously, we do the taxes and compliance stuff as well, which is where our bread and butter is. But yeah, you know as well as I do that when people have a problem, they're calling us or they're calling you.
Exactly right. We're kind of the go-to on the front line of the guys that should have the answers. And there's a lot of complexity that's going on at the moment. So what we're going to start with is what is going on right now, particularly for small businesses. So Danny, I guess the thing that's on everyone's mind and the questions that we're getting right now is around these stimulus packages.
Yeah, so I'll jump into the stimulus packages in a sec. So what's happening is we're having a huge rise everyone's seen a massive drop in revenue overnight, like unprecedented drop in revenue. We've had things like GFCs and things like that where things happen in certain industries or around the world. But what's actually happened now is like people have lost either 100% of their revenue or some portion of that. I was speaking to a cafe client today who has 100 and something stores around the country. They're down 70% daily on their revenue, and they're not shut. They're like, it's just, there's no foot traffic. There's no one going out. Obviously I've got clients who run gyms. They've lost 100% of their revenue. We're an accounting firm who do compliance. It's revenue, and we're losing revenue. Like just everyone's going, hang on a second. I'm not spending a cent until I know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
And that's having a flow on effect to every business. Like obviously it just flows on to someone else. The government's obviously making some decisions to try and help with that, because they realize that if they don't do anything, everyone's going to be on the streets in a second, and they obviously can't have that, or looting, or America, gun sales are booming. So
crazy.
They don't necessarily want that here. You don't want to see a big crime outbreak, which like it sounds stupid, but it's a real possibility. Like if I got to the point that I can't feed my family, you do what it takes.
Correct.
So the government's doing what they can to deal with that, which is these stimulus packages. I'm across it more from a business perspective, so I'm going to talk from that perspective.
Great.
So there's two major points that will help businesses. The first is the $100,000, what they're calling cash relief. Essentially, what that is the tax you withhold on wages in your quarterly BASs. Like, most business owners will understand this. They pay a BAS every quarter. It's got a GST component, and it's got a wages with a tax on wages component. The tax on wages that you pay every quarter, basically up to $100,000, you're not going to have to pay for the next 3 quarters. It's not that simple. It's a bit more complicated than that. But the most benefit you're going to get is $100,000 of tax on wages you won't have to pay. And it's not actual cash that you're going to get. It's just you won't have to pay that money to the ATO. The problem I have with that, Jackson, and you'll know this more than as much as I do from all the stuff you look at, is not a lot of people actually pay that money on time or have the cash flow. Like a lot of people are in payment plans already, and so that actual benefit there, a lot of people won't actually feel a difference of, because a lot of people use the ATO as a bank.
Yes.
Already. So the good thing is they won't have to go back and pay this in the future, but in the short term, that's not really going to help a lot of people. It's better than not doing that, obviously, but I don't think that's the silver bullet that's going to solve this problem for a lot of businesses when you're talking about 70% drops in revenue. When the government announced that as an initiative, I don't think they realized how big the problem was going to be.
And that's the scary part, right? So I guess given that they've had the first stimulus package, which seemed really rushed, like to get something out, and they've had this second one, which seems to be a little bit more considered. Do you expect there's going to be a third one?
I think that they actually acknowledge that there's going to be a third stimulus package. My gut feel is the third one is going to be completely directed towards rents, like commercial. Because for the most part, they've dealt with, if you send everyone home tomorrow, they can all go to Centrelink and they'll get $1,100 a fortnight.
That's right. But you still got to pay the rent, right?
You still got to pay the rent. So take away the rent from people, they can probably live off $1,100 a fortnight if they're locked in their house and all they're doing is eating, and we're not going online shopping every day. The $1,100 most people can probably get through if they don't have living costs.
Yeah.
I mean, housing costs.
Because you got to think, like, typically your rent or your mortgage is anywhere between 30 and sometimes 50% of your household income.
Yeah, correct. So I actually would think it's more for a lot of people because of the housing prices in Sydney, and people obviously overextend. But if they take that away for a small period of time, everyone can probably sit at home with they probably wouldn't even need $1,100 a week, mate, or fortnight.
Sure.
Like, anything if you're not going anywhere. You just need your groceries. So I think that's what the third measure will be. Obviously, I'm speculating, but from what's happened around the world, from what I understand, is that's been the part that's made the difference. Like, I think in the UK, they're paying 80% of people's mortgages and stuff like that, or rents.
Yeah.
And if you take the commercial lease array from the gyms that have all just shut and stuff like that, none of them would stress.
No, I get you.
Yeah.
So what are the other questions that you're getting at the moment, Danny? Because obviously you're on the front lines, you're speaking to a lot of different businesses in a lot of different industries. What are the most common questions you're hearing?
So most people are just scared. Like, I've filmed some videos for people and stuff, and I break down everything that's happening, and they still just ring and want to talk.
Yeah.
I think that most people just are scared and just want some clarity on what they should do next. So I know we're going to touch on that, but a lot of the things is like, what should I do? What should I do? And I don't think there's people in that boat. I think there's a lot of people that I'm having to ring and go, hey, you need to do something here. Like, I don't think you fathom what's coming. And of course, they're not feeling it yet. Like, I've got some real estate clients who are like, no, we're all good, mate. We've still got our listings. Like, yeah, but next month you're not going to have any listings. So you need to start making like plans today. So we're getting questions all around that. We're getting questions around, like, I only just explained one of the stimulus measures to you. So the second one, which I was going to touch on, is the $250,000 loan. So the government's basically given a whole bunch of money to the bank and said, give it out to the people. They need 250 grand, maximum 250 grand. We're going to secure half of it. The bank will secure the other half, 3-year term, 6-month, no repayments. Like, it's a reasonable, good deal. Problem is, people pay that back at some point. So it's not really, again, a silver bullet, but it is what it is. We're getting a lot of questions on that. Like, how do I get that money? And I'm just like, no idea. Like, you ring the banks. I spoke to Sam at Aureus upstairs. He's like, mate, I've rang every bank today and no one can give me an answer on what the plan is. They don't know yet because, like you said, it's a bit rushed. They're trying to find solutions that work, but it's not easy to get this kind of stuff. You've seen Centrelink lineups, like anything announced. Mate, I reckon there's more coronavirus getting spread at Centrelink than what there was before this.
It's crazy.
Crazy, mate. Between what's going on there, what's going on in shopping centers, like, the reaction that's happening is so far unproportionate to what the problem is at the moment. I know it's going to get worse, or I suspect it is, but I think
it's fear that's driving everything, mate. It's just this disconnect between the fundamentals and the sentiment, and I think that disconnect is increasing exponentially by the day. And that's the problem, that we just don't know how long this thing's going to last for. So I think this then leads us on to the why, right? I think that you've got a really intimate understanding, and you've helped us a lot in terms of preparing, and worked with many of our clients around making sure that we had the right war chest, that we prepared for the unforeseen. Because look, none of us saw the writing on the wall here, but we knew something was bound to happen because we really haven't felt any pain since the GFC, right?
Yeah.
So why do you think businesses are suffering so much? And going back to the, I guess, additional what can we be doing to make sure that we can kind of lessen the blow of what's happening here?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, the biggest reason why people are suffering so much, I think there was a lot of business that was on the edge anyway. Like, you saw the start of 2020, how many retailers were shutting down anyway. People have been on the edge for a long time, I feel like. Rising property costs, rising rents, rising employment costs, a lot less cash in the economy. So the compliance of all the cafes and all the food industry having to put everything on the books, which I know they should have been doing, but they weren't necessarily. So the cost of employment and running a business was going up and up and up. And so people have been on the brink regardless. And I know this is a whole generation issue, and I don't know what it was like, obviously, before I got involved, but the whole time I've been involved in accounting, I've stressed more about people's money than they have. People seem to live month to month and not care about it and spend everything they have and buy new cars. And people laugh at me because they always laugh that I haven't bought Jess her new car yet because I one a while ago. But it's for this exact reason. Like I'm always over worrying about what could happen, probably too far. But I think I do that because everyone I deal with is so far the other way, in that they don't think about tomorrow or they don't think about the future, and they're just like blowing cash. So I think that's why we're feeling this so fast. Most people don't have a cash buffer that can go, yeah, it's all good, we'll shut the business for a week or 2 weeks or whatever and it'll be okay. They literally can't eat if they don't have that week's pay coming in.
Exactly. It's nuts. Like we've had some clients, and we did a survey of our client base, and we've been really focusing on trying to get people to have that 3 to 6 months war chest.
Yep.
And when we surveyed our clients, a lot of them had that buffer. So they're thankful now. They're looking back. We're like, happy we didn't deploy all of that bloody cash. Yeah. But there's lots of people that are in pain that they're living week to week. And the issue is that they're probably not going to see the other side of this.
Not unscattered. So my gut feel, Jackson, is the next 6 months is going to be tough, but the government are going to soften the blow. So there'll be a bunch of people that get 250K loans. There'll be a bunch of landlords that help tenants, and they, will get through the next 6 months. I feel like the 6 months after, or the 12 months after that, when the funding goes, tax, I suspect the conversation to increase GST will come back, and GST will go up because
we're going to pay off this deficit somehow, right?
We gave you all this money. Now we need you to help us pay it back. Like that will flow into the economy. Obviously, again, I'm speculating, but I suspect that's going to have a flow-on effect. The 250 grand loans that everyone just paid, they're going to have to start making those repayments. I think that's when the real pain is going to come.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you're going to see a whole nother wave of economy crash.
It's scary times, mate. And I guess we always tend to have this 2020 vision in hindsight, right?
Yeah.
So it's a matter of what can we do, and I guess why do these problems exist in the first place? Like I think Winston Churchill said, if we don't learn from history, we're bound to repeat it, right? And we've seen debt transfer from governments since the global financial corporations in the global financial crisis to governments and households, right? And I think Australians per capita are debted up.
Yeah.
So what do you think is going to be the flow-on effect to things like property markets, and what impact is it going to have to, I guess, you aside from small business, to your households?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So I'm not an expert in obviously this stuff, but just talking to clients and talking to people, I'm actually getting mixed responses on this. I've got a lot of people who keep talking to me about they suspect there's going to be a big peak in property because the share market's dropped so hard that everyone will rip their money out and start jumping into properties on the back of it. My gut feel is the property market has to fall to some degree because it's just supply and demand conversation.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anyone's going to be in the market looking to buy. However, the only thing that I think may change that is I feel obviously money's very cheap, and I feel like APRA is going to lift some of it's going to continue to lift its restrictions on the banks to lend some money out, make money lending easy again. So all the work from the Royal Commission, I reckon, is going to get reversed.
It's going to get undone, yeah.
Yeah, I honestly think it's going to get undone, and money's just going to fly back into the economy, like lending, which might keep housing afloat and booming because, obviously the share market's lost 40%. So it'll be interesting to see where that money moves. If nothing changes and everything stayed the same, property has to fall because incomes are going to fall and there's going to be less people buying houses. And obviously we know how high house prices are in Sydney, at least.
Yeah.
It's impossible to sustain that in a world where my income just went to $1,100 a fortnight because I'm on Centrelink.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I think it's going to exacerbate the separation of wealth, and it's really just a matter of the people who are able to endure and batten down the hatches and see this thing through. They're going to be able to reap the rewards when the tides turn, because I think it's important to realize that this has happened before, and we end up with this V-shaped correction where there's a steep decline, but then there's also a steep recovery. And it's really just making sure that we can batten down the hatches.
I think the only difference this time compared to other times, in my view, and again, it's probably a bit uneducated because we didn't live through the GFC in the same way that we're living through this, where we're kind of in working years. Just the way that it's so global, firstly. I know it was called a global financial crisis, but this is like global.
More global. This is as global as you can get.
Yeah. It's every industry being impacted. And secondly, the speed at which it came on. Like, again, the GFC, obviously we talk about 2008 as a bad year in Australia, but that started in 2007 in the US. I think it was March. So it was like a 12-month flow-on effect till we felt it in Australia, where this has been kind of instant in Australia.
Yeah, I think we escaped pretty well unscathed global financial crisis. I think we've probably taken it for granted.
Agreed.
I think people in other areas of the world have been more conservative with the hindsight of being really impacted by the global financial crisis. And look, I think we all have a pretty short memory span, right? We forget pretty quickly and get back on the high horse. So I think it's a matter of how do we deal with the here and now? And let's talk about the how. So let's talk about a couple of scenarios here. Let's say we've got a business that already has outstanding tax debts. As we know, many businesses have been kicking the tin down the road for quite a long while. And this has obviously just been another situation that's probably crippled them. So what should businesses in that situation who already have outstanding liabilities and be stretched to as far as they can go, what should they be doing right now?
To be completely honest, and obviously you'd have to look at everyone's situation separately, but if my business was on the brink already and it fundamentally didn't make sense and fundamentally wasn't working, I'd honestly be I'd be speaking to a liquidator and going, hey, what's the plan here? I know that's probably a bit aggressive, but you've just traded through probably the last 5 best years that the economy's ever seen, from a revenue perspective and consumer sentiment perspective for the most part. If it wasn't working then, it's definitely not going to work in the next 12 or 24 months.
Yeah.
So if you're in a point where the business fundamentally couldn't make money then, and I'd be having that serious conversation with myself. If I'm on the edge of that and I go, you know what, it's just timing. I only just started. I was investing money and I have a reason for why I've got that ATO debt. Obviously, like I said before, people use the ATO as a bank sometimes. So if I've strategically gone, yep, that's fine. I'm using them and I know what I'm doing. The first thing I do is get on the phone with the ATO or all of the people that I owe money to in terms of lenders and try and get a pause or borrows, like just hold on any of my repayments. The ATO are very receptive to that at the moment because the government's told them to be. They don't want to send anyone broke through this period. Same from a lender's perspective, the ATO has told them to relax a second. And my understanding, I spoke to Sam again up at your office today. My understanding from him is the banks have acknowledged that anyone that pauses their loan through this period won't get a black mark on their name because of it. So, and which makes commercial sense.
Sure.
So I'd be having those conversations really fast before I do anything else. Try and stop the bleeding as quick as possible from a cash flow perspective.
Cool. Okay. Now, in terms of stopping the bleeding, what's the best way and the simplest way for your average business owner to get a better understanding of their numbers so they can make these tough decisions? How would they go about it?
You have to, I'm assuming that they're using Xero or MYOB as accounting software.
Let's hope so.
If they aren't, get to zero. So first thing you're doing is you're running your 12-month P&L, your last 12 months. We're going through this exercise internally. So you're running your last 12-month P&L. I'd just start on an annual basis. I wouldn't even worry about breaking it down monthly to start with. Just run my 12-month P&L, then have a look at it like side by side, column next to it, look at it with a 40% drop in revenue or a 50% drop in revenue, leave all your costs as they are and just understand what that would mean for your business. Then go a step deeper into your actual customers and have a look and go, can they pay me? Can they not pay me? What would that look like? Because they're going to, obviously like I've got clients who are gyms who have all had to shut down this week. I've got to have realistically, are they going to be in a position to pay their bills in the next 6 months? I doubt it. As much as they need to lodge a BAS to the ATO, I don't think they're going to care as a priority if they're not feeding their kids.
Yeah.
So have that conversation with yourself about your customers to just get an idea of what your business could look like over the next 12 months on an annual level. And then from that step, Jackson, I'd literally go expense by expense, line by line, jump into every single item and just cut out expenses everywhere I can. If it's easier, go off your bank statement, print off your bank statement and go from that if that's easier. But one way or the other, get into every expense that you pay and just work out what you cannot pay for the next 6 months, because everyone has to be that aggressive. I think I'd rather be over the top aggressive than wish I'd done more later.
Makes perfect sense. Okay. And what about navigating the impacts of the stimulus? What would be your recommendations there?
All right. So the other part of what we were just going to touch on then, like with the P&Ls, is people. And that's probably the biggest part with this stimulus. So the first, like I was saying before, it's the tax on wages that you're getting the rebate on as part of that stimulus. Like that's the major item for people, for businesses. If you go today and you get rid of all your people, obviously you're not going to get that stimulus because you're not going to be withholding any tax on wages, or you might for the March quarter, but you won't for the June quarter, like that timing. Sure. So when you do your March passes, that's probably when the most important quarter is going to be, this next quarter you're doing now. Make sure you're talking to your accountant, your advisor, talk to us, talk to you guys, make sure wages are structured correctly in that March quarter pass. There's a lot of owners that take their pay as drawings or dividends. Like we've spoken about that before with some of the clients we both work on together. We're probably reverse and restructure all that for this March quarter to just maximize, not to take advantage of, but to make sure they're in the right position. Because we only manage it one way to, get the best tax outcome. Obviously, we weren't thinking about what's going to happen if we have a global pandemic and the government brings out the stimulus. So we have to react to that. And the best time to react to that is in this March quarter. So you can plan for June at the same time for your year-end tax. So have that conversation. And then at the same time, you definitely have to be having a people conversation. As part of that revenue drop, the biggest cost to most businesses is their people. It's their rent and their people. So people, you're going to have a real look and rank your people 1 to 10, or who's the best performing, who's the lowest performing, and obviously start at the bottom. And you're going to have to just start having these tough conversations, which is difficult, but it's reality. And once you've got rid of the culture, building culture is difficult, as you know. Building good teams is difficult. So no one wants to go through this, especially when they've got good people. But so you have to manage these conversations, like communicate early, communicate often, make sure they're involved in the conversation. Once you get rid of the people that are culture killers that that if in a perfect world you wouldn't hire again anyway, which they're the first people that should go, then you have to have a real tough conversation about, all right, what do we do with the rest of the team? Do we look at 1 week on, 1 week off and splitting shifts, or everyone's going to take a 30% pay cut? Like, you've got to get creative here and obviously work within the law, but all bets are kind of off for a second, because it's either that or we're going to end up bankrupt and we're not going to have a business. So getting into that people conversation and then managing that with taxes on the book to make the most of the stimulus next quarter are kind of go hand in hand a little bit. But it's a hard one, man, because I know when you start playing with people, you're talking about emotions now and relationships and things like that, and it's black and white.
Yeah, look, I think business owners need to understand, and look, it's always tough. It's not easy being a business owner. You and I know this. It's the hardest job in the world. And at the end of the day, this is where you really shine, because you can either just allow this situation to unfold around you and do nothing. And the reality is you might go bankrupt, you might go into liquidation, and then you can't employ people. And I think you're going to have a longer term impact on the overall globe, in terms of being able to be pulled completely out of the game, than having to potentially consolidate short term and then hopefully save your business. And then when the tables turn and the economy grows, that you can actually create more opportunity.
It's 100% right, mate. I love my team. I've got the best team in the world from an accounting perspective. And I think that's why we're really successful in what we do. But I'm seriously going to have a conversation with some people and say, listen, the only way we're going to survive the back end of this is if we put some people, like, we're essentially putting them on the bench. We're not firing anyone. We're not making anyone redundant. We're just saying we need you to take some time off. And we'll pick it back up again later, as soon as we can. But if we don't do that, the outcome of not doing that is worse than the outcome of a couple of people getting them the Centrelink and sitting at home for a couple of months, because obviously it's not my choice. I'd love to have more work coming in and more people here.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough time. And look, I think that's really where, look, if you don't feel like you can make those decisions for yourself, guys, make sure you speak to your advisors. And look, we're not heartless souls. We care as well. However, sometimes having that third party perspective to help you make those tough decisions and help you think outside the square is what you need. And this is the reason why our phone's ringing off the hook. Like, my phone's going as we're talking right now. I'm sure yours is too.
The messages are coming through, like, and what's the webinar? We'll answer it there.
Exactly. And look, we can help make those tough decisions to help guide through.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the key thing here, and the takeaway that I'm hearing, mate, is that the 100K is not your saving grace. Like, if you can't afford the people in the first place, it's not going to get you through out the other side of this thing. It's really just there to take out a little bit of the sting.
Correct. Like I said, I don't think they fathomed how bad the problem was going to be when they done these announcements. And I've got clients that have cafes that franchisees are just walking out on them and saying, we're not doing this anymore. Like, deal with the lease, it's your problem, kind of thing. And I've got others that they've had, like I said, 70% drop in revenue. I've got gyms was like no one I think foresaw how hard that would be. The other thing most people should be doing is, we said talk to your banks. You should all be talking to your landlords as well, and just, you know, they've got a lease to pay, or they've got loans to pay, etc. And everyone's in a different situation, but you should at least be having that conversation going, guys, like, I need help here. What are we going to do? I think the government stimulus, the next one that comes, will deal with that. But regardless, you need to have those conversations early. They're the biggest costs: rent and wages.
And look, I think that's the key thing, is that at this point, you're right, all bets are off, that everything can be negotiated. And I think you've got to have...
Like, what's the alternative to the landlord? If I go broke tomorrow, you're not going to get a new tenant the next day.
No way. No. Yeah, and I'm sure it's not a conversation they want to be having, but it's the reality of the situation. We've only got to see the line around the block at Centrelink to see how significant this thing is.
It's actually crazy. Yeah, can't fathom how it's going to be bad this fast.
It's crazy. So, mate, let's talk about the now. And I guess we're in a position where it's a little bit bittersweet, that we sometimes need to give the tough advice. So, mate, if we're talking primarily to small business owners, what would be 3 tips that you'd want to give them that they can take away from this to kind of navigate the times?
I'm going to give you probably 5 or 6. Is that all right?
Go for it, mate. I love that. The more the better.
So first thing is, we've touched on a couple of these already. First thing is, have a real look at your business and don't bullshit to yourself, and just make a tough decision. Do I have a real business here, or am I dead in the water anyway? And I need to have a look at that. There's not going to be a better time to go through a liquidation, most likely, than the next 6 months, because it's going to be a lot easier process. And I reckon there'll be a lot more lenience on it in the future when people look back, because there'll be a lot of it. So have that tough conversation. Next thing is, do that forecast we spoke about. Understand what your business is going to look like. Cut out all the fat is the third thing. Get rid of all the expenses that you can, and make those, just cut everything. You're better off going over the top than under. Fourth thing is, look at all the government stuff. Make sure you understand it. Make sure you're prepared for that. Apply for that 250K loan. Like, do all the incentive pieces. Have a look at your people. Get into detail into who you need to keep and don't need to keep. At least understand your roster. Your rank of who's highest, who's lowest. So you're prepared for that conversation. Go negotiate with your banks, your landlords, and the ATO. Have those 3 negotiations and just get that down pat. That's all the defensive stuff I'd be doing. So that's essentially get my business ready to basically be running at 0 revenue, and make sure I know how long my cash buffer is that I can live for, and that kind of conversation. The other thing I'd be doing is, from an offensive position, is going, all right, I'm in a market that I've never been in before. Like, I've lost all this revenue. What can I now do? I'm going to be stuck at home for 3 months. What's the offensive stuff I can do to grow my business, or grow another revenue stream, or find another way to win in this environment while everyone else is sitting on their haunches? So you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, you're in this spot because you'll take risks and you'll find solutions to problems, etc. Now's like you said before, now's your time to shine as a leader and as an owner. I've got gyms who are launching online programs, which is an obvious answer for them to try and generate revenue that way. I've got someone who runs they run like education business classes for schools, for kids in high school, that they're transforming that into a business about helping people homeschool, like helping mums homeschool with their kids, and sending out kits to mums with homeschooling, and subscription business around that, which is pretty crazy. Everyone's approaching it in different ways, but it's a chance to get creative and go, all right, what can I offer my customer, my audience now? I know you're doing a fair bit of content. We're doing a fair bit of content around, all right, there's a need here. Let's fill this gap, and let's get in people's faces for a period of time while we can help them. If I'm at home, and if I actually have to sit at home for 3 months, I'll end up writing a book, or I'll end up doing a podcast series. Like, if I can't, I'll save 4 hours a day that I spend driving around.
Exactly.
And on that point, like, look at your business model as a whole and go, all right, now I can operate in 2020, and all my clients are going to be forced to do video conference and things like that. Like, how can you change your business model to work in a world where people will be more open to doing things differently? DocuSign's now a guarantee. Like, there's no question. I'm not posting anything. I can't go to the post office.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that us as business owners have probably taken for granted, in terms of just expecting things are what they are and they can never be challenged. Yeah. And look, I think this is really an opportunity for us to innovate. And we look back to periods like world wars, right? Mm-hmm. Where the best innovation and the newest inventions were all came out of that fear, right? People fearing for their lives. And we're facing the same situation right now.
Yeah, it's a different fear, but it's the same thing. Yeah.
And I think this is really where I think there is a lot of opportunity. So I think the key thing is don't be defeated by this. It doesn't matter if you lose all of your revenue. One of my mentors said to me, no one will ever take away your ability to earn an income whilst you're still living and breathing on this earth.
And it's, mate, I know tomorrow, like if everything recovers, if I lost everything today and the world recovered, like we start again at zero and we'd have a crack again. Like
exactly
what it is, we're here for the journey. It doesn't actually matter all the ones and zeros kind of thing. It's just numbers. You know, it'd be hard and it'd hurt and I'd be pretty upset about it because I've worked pretty hard to get to where we've got to. But the reality is, like, no one can take away your health's the most important thing. As long as we got that, I'll be happy. I got my kids, I got my wife. As long as Jess doesn't kick me out, I'm all good.
Mate, that's all that matters, right?
Yeah, that's it, mate. I know I gave a bit more than 3 or 4 tips or whatever. But
no, that's fantastic, mate. I think that gives us some great insight. So, guys, off the back of this, next steps, Danny and Kelly Partners have been really good at documenting all of the stimulus, all of the incentives that are available. It's regularly being updated. So, Danny, if people want to get access to those checklists, all of the details of all of the incentives and stimulus, where do they find it?
So we've put it on the homepage of the website. So kellypartners.com.au. There's a link there that it's a live tracker of the stimulus, not just from the government, but what the banks are doing and what they're saying, and then how to apply for the different things that are available. So head there. The checklists are there it's basically what I just went through now, like action items that you can take, like what you should be doing both personally and business. So we only spoke about business then, but Jackson, you know, everyone should be looking at their wills and their insurances and all that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, when there's a crisis, a health crisis going around the world and 5,000 people dying a day or whatever it is, you want to make sure your life insurance is in order.
Exactly.
So doing all that stuff, like personally, and then obviously the business stuff. So kellypartners.com.au, everything's there that you need. Otherwise, flick me a text, 0406 181 946. I've got 20 while we're on the phone, so if I take a little bit to get back, then yeah, bear with me. But send me a text there. Someone will get in touch, one of the team. But yeah, website or phone number.
Beautiful. And look, here's the thing, guys. Having a good accountant on your team, having a good tax advisor at this time is critical. This is really where a good accountant and tax advisor shows their weight in gold. We had a really bad experience with our last accountant. Been with Danny and the team for quite a while now. Haven't been happier. Wouldn't spruik them if we couldn't hand on heart say and speak for the work that they've done. So if you're reaching out to your accountant and your tax advisor and they're not giving you the answers, they don't give you the confidence that you need to make these tough decisions, then don't be afraid to look elsewhere. Danny, I really appreciate you making the time, mate. I know you're under the pump and I appreciate you sharing your insights. Hopefully some of this is going to help people make the right decisions they need to see the other side of this.
No, thank you, Jackson, mate. If anyone needs anything, reach out. Happy.
Awesome, mate. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Talk soon, bud.
Take care.